What's going on? Welcome to Unlocking Your Inner Strength. In these episodes, I share with you insights and inspirations that have come to me on my path in life, and hopefully they can be a welcome hand of guidance as you move along your journey. I teach because I'm passionate about my message. I teach because it helps me to learn more deeply. Thanks for sharing a few minutes of your time with me for this week's episode, and without further ado, here is this week's show. What's up, everybody? Episode 284 of Unlocking Your Inner Strength. Got a banger for you today. Shouldn't do that when you're speaking, what I just did. I'm trying to work on that. I used to be really good, and I'm getting back in that bad habit. Don't use extraneous, non-meaningful parts of a sentence. And Devin's actually been teaching me a lot about sentence structure and all that, because it's stuff I'm sure I learned at one point in my life, but I don't know it as an adult. And I love to write and all that, and I love to read. That's why I'm learning that. Before I get into part one with lessons on being fearless, part one, I think I shared with most of you that I had gone 110 days without caffeine. Last Saturday, we were sitting around. I was planning on Halloween having my first dose of caffeine or cup of coffee in over 3 months, about 3.5 months, something like that. So I had it Saturday just from the Keurig, just a cup, because me and Devin were chilling, didn't feel anything. So today, I wasn't able to make it to jujitsu, just the way my schedule fell. So I went over to a coffee shop after I went by at the Flemington gym. At the Flemington gym, I got some Java Stem, which is probably my favorite caffeine supplement, if you will. It's also got tyrosine and phenylalanine. Did a couple of them. Actually, I did 3 of them. And I did a nitro cold brew at Fuel Factory. Let me just say, that was worth the wait. 1,000%. Everything I do when I went to 10 days without food, when I do the weekly 48-hour fast and 1 meal a day to Black Panda, as I reflected upon it today, it's all self-experimentation, but selfishly, it's to give me the edge. I'm always looking to get an edge in my life. Against who, you might ask? Against myself. Life is a competition. Once you realize that you're not competing against somebody else, though, it becomes much more enjoyable. It's me competing against myself. One of the main reasons I wanted to go that long without caffeine is I can't feel caffeine anymore. I get no benefit from it as far as focus. Today, I felt it. I wanted to see, not from a stimulant point of view, but I wanted to see from a cognitive and mental point of view what it would be like to reintroduce it at that level. Think of caffeine, which is, besides food, the most used drug in the world. And food is a drug. We're not going to get into that now, but it's funny how they apply definitions to certain things. But caffeine is the most used drug in the world. I remember in college, one of my professors, was a freshman or sophomore, asked the class, what's the most used drug in the world? And right away, boom, I knew it. But everybody else was thinking it was like aspirin or something like that. It's caffeine. And I would consider myself, I would place caffeine in the plant medicine arena when it's used properly. Everything's about dose and duration. You don't want to overuse it. I actually picked up some Death Wish coffee last weekend. Didn't get to make it yet. I'll have that Sunday with some Java Stem. Then going forward, at max, I'll have caffeine once a week. Because what I felt today was awesome. Really good. You feel the drug effect, right? It's dose and duration. And I would consider myself at this point in my life what's called a psychonaut. Kind of like an astronaut, but psychonaut. I'm always trying different compounds, plant medicines now to see how it affects my brain and how it gives me access to my spirit and insight. Today was well worth it. Now, getting into it. Today is going to be part one. These won't be in successive weeks necessarily. But I've gone back to reading one of my favorite top 5 books, one of my favorite books of all time, The 50th Law. I know this is backwards probably if you're watching it on Facebook. Very important book to me personally. Going back through it probably for the third or fourth time. Each lesson I will present with this, and fear is something I've studied greatly because I have struggled with it throughout my life. But learning how to deal with it up here and through mind map has allowed me to progress and compete against myself on higher and higher levels. So today is going to be lesson 1. I'm going to go through the first 20 pages of this book with different, you see my bookmarks, I got a bunch in there, and how they apply to life, and I'll do this pretty quickly. Hopefully you can take one thing away from this. If you have questions, post them. Don't forget to hit the like button and hit the share button if it means something to you. Let's get into this, because after this, I don't even like that word because, but sometimes you have to use it. After this, got to go train some clients. This is from Malcolm X. I'll read some stuff from the book, give you my intake on it, insight on it, if it needs any further insight. So over you is the greatest enemy a man can have, and that is fear. I know some of you are afraid to listen to the truth. You have been raised on fear and lies, but I'm going to preach to you the truth until you are free of that fear. Once you become free of fear, it's liberating. Fear will always rise up, no matter what level you're playing at. It will always rise up. As I tell people from what I know and what I know about how the mind works through mind mapping and life experience, fear is an illusion. It's based in the future. The future does not exist. The only thing that exists is now. When you look at the timeline of life, fear is a projection into the future. When you get to that future, it's in the present moment. You realize that the future doesn't exist. You realize that fear doesn't really exist besides up here. Let's see. All right. An animal that cannot let go of its fears, once the threat is gone, will find it hard to eat and sleep. How many of you are holding on to fear of something that is out there in the future that is making it hard for you to function in your life, whether that's literally eating and sleeping, since you have to be in what's called your parasympathetic nervous system, which is relax, digest, sleep, recover, to do those things, eat and sleep. Fear is going to keep you in the sympathetic part of your nervous system, fight, flight, or freeze. You're always going to be on a high alert. So an animal that cannot let go of its fears once the threat is gone will find it hard to eat and sleep. If the threat cannot be dealt with in the moment, let go of it. It's the projection. The determining factor will be our attitude, how we choose to look at this reality. If we give in to the fear, we will give disproportionate attention to the negative and manufacture the very adverse circumstances that we dread. If we go the opposite direction, cultivating a fearless approach to life, attacking everything with boldness and energy, then we will create a much different dynamic. Understand, we are all too afraid of offending people, of stirring up conflict, of standing out from the crowd, of taking bold action. I'm going to tell you guys from my life, I didn't become free in my life until I embraced who I was as an individual. I don't care that I got pink glasses on or whatever color you call this. I like wearing my Mexico hat. It's very liberating. I'm not trying to be somebody else. I'm not trying to be something I'm not. Don't worry about offending people, stirring up conflict, standing out from the crowd. You're an individual. You got to act like it. You got to be it. Your attitude will, what I take away from that, determine your reality. Your attitude will determine your reality. It's always up here. You're constantly creating your reality. Reality does not exist except up in your mind. Just like fear doesn't exist except up here. What does that mean? Well, reality is in the present moment. However, the present moment is down to your perception of how the world is. I'd said last week in the episode, believe I said it, that I couldn't tell you the last bad day, or maybe it was an episode I did with BK. It'll be coming out in his podcast soon. We went an hour and a half, by the way. That's going to be pretty cool, I think, for you guys to check out. Attitude is everything. This is from Miles Davis. The very first thing I remember in my early childhood is a flame, a blue flame jumping off a gas stove somebody lit. I was 3 years old. I felt fear, real fear, for the first time in my life. But I remember it also like some kind of adventure, some kind of weird joy, too. I guess that experience took me someplace in my head I hadn't been before, to some frontier, the edge, maybe, or of everything possible. The fear I had was almost like an invitation, a challenge to go forward into something I knew nothing about. That's where I think my personal philosophy of life started, with that moment. In my mind, I have always believed and thought since then that my motion had to be forward, away from the heat of that flame. Think about that, how that applies to your life. Fear. As a child, one of my great memories was a fear of death. How is that a great memory for a child? It really shaped almost everything I became passionate about. I had to wrap my head around, at a young age, mortality and how finite life is. It got hooked into my brain. One of our childhood friends from the old neighborhood in Michigan, she was about 10 or 12 years old, died when I was 7 or 8 years old. And that was devastating to me on my psyche. So for 2, 3, 4 years, I would cry every day. My mom, poor mom, had to deal with that. But it really shaped a lot of what I think about life now. Most people still don't want to acknowledge that their time here on this earth is finite. It will come to an end. This is not a practice round. I do believe your spirit comes back and can enter different realms and different bodies, but that's spiritual evolution. This go around right now is not practice. Remember that. A fearless attitude, such types learn the value of not only being unafraid, but of also attacking life with a sense of boldness and urgency and an unconventional approach, creating new models instead of following old ones. Do what you do, guys. One of the things I live by is be unconventional. It's funny that I just read that. I don't remember reading that the first time I read this in 2012. Be unconventional. Attack life with a sense of urgency unbeknownst to mankind. Think about that. Why not? What are you waiting for? Don't play by the old rules. Don't play by, I got to fit in, right? That goes to what I just talked about before. You don't have to fit in. Be the purple cow. Another great book that I read years ago, The Purple Cow. That's the one that's going to stand out in the field. There are no Alps. At this part in the book, they're talking about Napoleon. There are no Alps, no obstacles that can stand in the way of a person without fears. When I talk about that, it's not that you're not going to not experience fear. It's going to pop up, believe me. Can you act in the face of fear? That's what courage is. It's not never having fear. That's not realistic for most of us mortal beings. It's what do you do in the face of fear? There's no limits on you when you go that route. The second tattoo I ever got on the back of my left tricep was Fear Nothing, based on this book. Coincidentally, that was right when I stopped teaching, around that time, right when I went on the rest of that part of my life's path. The physics that all fearless types discover at some point, an appropriate ratcheting up of self-belief and energy when facing negative or even impossible circumstances. I'm going to relate that to my life because that is what I know best. I think anybody, if you ask any of my very close friends, you ask Devin, you ask my brothers, sister-in-laws, parents, they're going to tell you that whatever shortcomings I have intellectually, whatever they may be, emotionally, I do always ratchet up my self-belief and energy. Always. I believe that I can do impossible things. I told you I never have bad days. To some people, that might be impossible. But you got to ratchet it up. You got to step up to the plate. And that's why I pulled this book out again. There was things going on in my life that I had to step up to the plate and take back control of. I feel great that I'm at that. And you might notice I got a little trim on the beard. Halloween's over. That was part of my costume, going this way with it. But now I'm back on my point. I trimmed it, right? I didn't cut it off. Just like a cluttered desk could be the sign of what's going on in your mind, this was kind of getting a little out of control. Perhaps that was what was going on in my mind. I don't know. I'm just looking at it as an observer from the outside point of view. People who cannot suffer can never grow up, can never discover who they are. I would replace that word suffer with struggling. Suffer is a choice. Struggling is mandatory to get to the next level of the video game of your life. People who cannot suffer can never grow up, can never discover who they are. James Baldwin. Think about that. You could only become the butterfly by struggling through the chrysalis, like I talked about last week with Devin, chrysalis, whatever you call that. That's how you develop the wings. If you cut that thing open, that caterpillar will not develop into a butterfly. It will die. Allow it to struggle. Allow your mental and spiritual self to struggle. Allow your physical self to struggle. I believe you could only ratchet up sometimes in your life to the next level when you put yourself in situations where you're going to struggle and face conflict and be uncomfortable. I'm not talking about stepping outside your comfort zone. Step to the edge of your comfort zone. That's where you are going to struggle, at the edge. Talking about 50 Cent here. So this book has a lot to do with 50 Cent. And people, again, will poo-poo that as, oh, what is this rapper, this dude from the street going to be able to teach me? I went to an Ivy League school. I throw that stuff out the window. That's what when you got to empty your cup. Learn from everybody. He decided to cut his ties to the game and dive into the music racket without any connections or a safety net. Because he had no plan B, because it was either succeed at music or go under, he operated with the frantic, bold energy that we just talked about that got him noticed in the rap world. Frantic, bold energy. Cut ties. Make a decision. A decision in the Latin root means to sever. Sever yourself from the other possibility. It could be burning the ships, which you understand that analogy. I don't believe that story with Cortez was actually true, but it's a great lesson. Burn the ships. It's no coincidence that when I stepped away from teaching, even when I started the first facility while I was teaching, it was very scary for me. This was the book I read that got me through it. A couple more, and then we will wrap up lesson 1 on fear. 2 more things for you guys. Going to keep this just under 20 minutes for you. The greatest fear people have is that of being themselves. They want to be 50 Cent or someone else. They do what everyone else does, even if it doesn't fit where and who they are. But you get nowhere that way. Your energy is weak and no one pays attention to you. You're running away from the one thing that you own, what makes you different. I lost that fear. And once I felt the power that I had by showing the world I didn't care about being like other people, I could never go back. I tell people, once you step into a different dimension, and I mean that in more than one way, you can't go back. So if you're not ready for that, don't do it. If you want to fit in, you want to be content, don't venture into that world yet. We're all at different parts of the journey. Once you taste that, you can't go back. Once you realize the one advantage you have is being you, life becomes much more fun. Last one, then I got to wrap it up. There's one thing we can actually control, the mindset with which we respond to events around us. That's why I studied the mind so much. That's why I was so infatuated. Perhaps the seed with Mind Map was planted in me when I was 7 years old and I had to confront real death for the first time in my life, which is hard for a 7-year-old to comprehend. When I talk about visuals, and look, I would go outside and stand in the fog when it was foggy out because I wanted to feel what it meant what it felt like to be in heaven. Think about that. I wouldn't trade that for the world, though. I understand as a parent that would be very tough for you to help your young child with, but I needed that. It made me start examining the human mind and reframing in my attitude at a very young age. And then I went through those periods as an adult too. It hasn't been a while. It's been a little while. I remember when me and Devin were dating, I was really struggling with the concept of death again at that point. Now I'm totally at peace of it. Totally at peace. Whether it's soon, whether it's when I'm 100 or 120. When other people die around me, they're still with me because they exist up here. Remember, your perception is what creates reality. That's all for today. I'm going to wrap it up. We've got some cool things coming up this weekend if you are around, or the next couple weeks, I should say. But this weekend, Sunday, feel free to bring anybody at our estate, our Lambertville estate, at our senior home. Nothing else like it out there. We're having a fall fest. Reindeer will be there. Bounce house, DJ, food truck, bonfire, s'mores, apple cider, hot cocoa, beer for the adults. All this stuff. It's going to be awesome. Go on to Lambertville Estate /Fall Fest. LambertvilleEstate.com /Fall Fest. Just register so we know how many people are coming. We'd love to have you. Hopefully you guys like that episode. The next period of time, I'll be going through this entire book. Again, it might not be successive weeks, but I'll be going through it. Thanks for all your support. Check out KyleNewell.com if you want to get on that email list, where it's one of the other businesses I'm slowly launching. Not by choice, just because I got so many other things going on. But that's where you can keep track. You wrote for today's episode. I appreciate you and your time, truly. I'm humbled and honored if you made it to the end of this episode. Don't forget, you can go to KyleNewell.com for your free ebook, written by yours truly, on getting started with fasting, infused with 5 mind map principles never before seen. This is something I have not given out to anybody else, that'll help you see the light when it comes to your fasting journey and creating better health, both physically and internally. Remember, it's all about the mind, body, and spirit. Until next week, peace.